Welcome back to A Time to Sharpen. This is a new format for us. We are doing a video podcast with the Buss family. We have JD and Kelly Buss with us, and they are parents of a recent graduate, and we're excited to have them on the podcast. Don't exactly know how this is going to go. We're hoping we have good video, good audio, and we can post this on YouTube and put it on the various podcasting platforms. So uh, this is a first, so this is an exciting adventure, as most things are at Whetstone. um, so uh, I'm a little out of my element in terms of like looking at myself talking here. I don't know how you feel about that, Brandon. Is it throwing you
You're
off to
not in
talk?
a dark, dank cave
No,
where we normally
it's
do
not. It's a
the
different vibe. It's a
podcast.
totally different vibe here. Yeah, we don't have the mood lighting or anything like that. So. Uh,
That's right.
Well, first, I guess I just want to thank Kelly and JD for coming on and doing this and being willing to share what they have gone through, and hopefully it will be helpful to other parents out there. We've had almost 150 families come through Whetstone, and there's a variety of different experiences that people have, and we're hoping that if you're thinking about sending a son to Whetstone, or if you've recently had a boy at Whetstone, or if you have a boy at Whetstone now, that this conversation will be helpful to you in kind of coping and work, feeling the feelings, as they say, as as we are on this journey. So, um, Kelly, JD, let me just start by asking you, like, what was the situation that kind of made you aware that you needed to seek some help, and whatever you're comfortable sharing in terms of the context of seeking out Whetstone.
You want me to go
Want me to
first? How's that
Ah,
sound?
go
well, I
first?
should
Go
probably,
first.
yeah.
Um,
We can rock paper scissors for it since we're on video here. Create a little drama. No, no,
uh,
whoever feels comfortable jumping in
I
there.
think what I think what really was happening was we have a really big family, and as our son's behavior continued to escalate, and he was not responding to different counseling that we had him in or different structure that we were trying to place around him, it was continuing to affect our entire family in such a way that it was becoming more and more clear that Joey was going to need to be in a different situation for a while where he could get the kind of structure and the one-on-one help and counseling that he needed, that we were trying to provide, but we couldn't control all the circumstances like a place
Right,
like Whetstone, able to control more of the environment for him.
right.
How
So
long
we
were some of
oftentimes
those
say,
things going on before it really started to get to where, how long were you kind of in that zone um, to really get to that spot to reach out to
yeah,
Whetstone?
We had we had been experiencing some of the things that Kelly described for well over a year, and you could say it's probably longer, but we had actually had conversations with our pastor a year prior to making decision on a Whetstone, and at that point in time, I had communicated to him that we may be at a point where we are beyond our current limits, and our pastor actually went out and provided us a list of three different possibilities. And we didn't make any decision on that until a year later at that time.
Yeah, we really weren't. I wasn't ready then. I didn't feel I was at my limit yet, and um, but as your question, Brandon, was how long? I mean, we have five sons, and this is our youngest son, so we're not shocked by what boys do, and we're used to a
yeah,
rowdy, busy, active house, but um, our youngest son was always the most challenging. And so that was apparent even at, 6, 7, 8 years old. But I think we kept thinking, oh, he's going to mature. Oh, it's going to, get a little bit easier. And what seemed to be happening was he was getting more intense instead of more mature. And so as he was getting bigger and older, those reactions that we were able to help him through at 6 and 7 were becoming much bigger. And while we never um, becoming more emotional, and so that's why that last year, like Judy said, we were considering it. I wasn't quite ready yet, and
Right.
our pastor wisely counseled us, not to do it until we were 100% in agreement. And then that last year, as I think probably puberty was starting to set, and more emotions, more volatility, and he was getting bigger,
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I
Well,
think pushed it.
I think there's a sweet spot that we kind of talk about in terms of you have to do everything you possibly can to try to reach him without
Mm-hmm.
going to the point where he's beyond whatever help that Whetstone could provide.
Right.
So, and that's different for every family. I guess just hearing your opinion about where that point was, when was there a moment where it became apparent to you? Like, we have some parents where there's a blow up, or there's an incident that it makes it totally obvious, or was it just like the cumulative effect of that year's worth of stress that finally reached a tipping point?
Kelly can chime in here too, but I feel like there was a specific point that happened in the summer,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still honestly not something I like to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But
Sure.
it's something that impacted us a lot and got us to a point where we said we believe we need to take different steps at that point. And
Mm-hmm.
just as a point, that one incident, even at the latest father and son weekend, that was something Joey actually talked to me about, and we hadn't talked about that incident in probably a year and a half
Right.
out there.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think what happened to me was, after that incident, then I was definitely unified with JD that this was what would be the best next step. But also, what I was seeing in Joey that supported that was he was becoming hardened. And so I felt like he was losing hope that he would be able to change himself. So
Yeah.
while he was incredibly saddened and grieved over that incident that JD's talking about, at the same time, I think he felt like, I'm never going to be anyone else either. And so when I saw that hardness and that kind of give up in him, I
Yeah.
knew we needed a complete new restart to help him learn some new skills.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting, and I think very valuable for parents that may be listening. Is just like JD, you had said, just you got to a spot beyond your current limits, and that's different for every family, and it's different for each spouse in the journey, because it's hard as parents, to there's guilt and some shame, and it's like admitting that we have failed as parents, and just like all these feelings that you have, and also just like, no, we're gonna make this work. There's the stubborn side of us. We're gonna figure this thing out, and I think just in general with our faith journey, as it relates to other relationships and other things, like we got, at some point we have to submit and admit that, what, there's some things out of our control, and we need help. So I think that's, it's great to hear you guys say that, because a lot of times parents, they fight that and they go longer than they should. And that hardened nature that you're talking about, Kelly, gets set a little bit more, I think. And so it also just speaks to the gravity of the situation and the decision as a parent uh, to send your son to a place like Whetstone, and strangers at first. And I mean, there's just so many things that go into that. So just,
Yeah.
it's interesting and I appreciate you guys sharing that. And just, I think that's what takes to get the help is like we have to get to a spot of just saying, hey, we need help, and that's okay.
Yeah. And that's one reason why we moved to serve younger boys 6 or 7 years ago. We dropped the age limit because we wanted
Uh,
to be a place where people could address the issues before they became um, too extreme. So, um, yeah, I
And
just want to just applaud your courage in making that decision. Like you do feel, I can imagine, haven't been in that exact situation, but I know there are situations in my parenting experience where I have to drop the rope, as we say, where you're just like, okay, uh, I've done all I can do to try to put limits and boundaries and everything on the situation, and now I have to go like beyond myself into a world of like trusting other people, trusting God
mhm.
to take care of whatever situation I'm dealing with because I'm outside of what I can do, um, and that takes a lot of courage and humility to do. So just want to encourage you and other parents who are at that point to realize that it is a very courageous thing to do, um, and not something you should feel bad about. Um, so that's one thing I wanted to get into was like the feelings of guilt, that when you do have to take that step, which is something we've talked a lot about on this podcast. But are there other feelings that hit you kind of unexpectedly or that blindsided you when you made this when you brought Joey and dropped him off, and then you kind of worked through all of what you might feel, and then this other emotion comes out of nowhere and just hits you a couple weeks into the program or a month into the program or whatever.
Mhm. Kelly, did you have anything you want to start with, or
Well, I mean, I cried more last year than I've cried in my entire life. So
Hmm.
just um, a mom being separated from her kid,
Yeah.
and I think I realized probably 2 or 3 weeks into the program, we were going to have this whole year that was going to be separate from Joey, and there'd be a whole year of memories that would come up now where he's like,
Right.
"Oh yeah, I wasn't there that year." We're like, "We did the oh yeah, you were at Whetstone that year," and vice versa. All the things that sometimes he mentions, and I go, "How do you know about that?" "Oh, we learned that at Whetstone. We talked about that one day in film class," or like, and so when I realized what that was going to be like, and you're ready for that when your kid goes to college. You're not ready for that when they're 12 or
Mm.
13.
Yeah.
And so that was emotional for me to realize that he was going to have this whole other experiences separate. And same with us. And then also just the fact that like you said, I completely trust that you guys would be able to handle the situations to the best of your abilities. Um, and that I just trust that God was going to protect Joey. And that was really hard just to know that I was not going to be the first person to make decisions about his um, either behavior or illnesses or health or any of that. So
Yeah.
that was hard.
yeah. I was going to say on there as well. I definitely agree with what Kelly said about definitely cried the most over the last year. And while it wasn't unexpected, I think it's so hard to really grasp the emotional aspect of when you're leaving, when you're actually in that car driving down the gravel road and there's no turning back. And that was the first time. But I think the other thing that really grasped me was when, for the first father son weekend, when I left, just realizing that I had a great time with Joey and enjoyed it. But then again, that gravel road, as you're leaving, you're realizing my son's still there, and, and the work is not finished. And having the fortitude to say we're going to be here till the work is finished, that's something that I'm not sure I was prepared for when we went into it.
Yeah. You
Hmm.
mentioned the sound of the gravel road. We have a little video that we put together about what it's like when you drop your son off at Whetstone to help parents to visualize. And we we were intentional about that sound effect as you move from the pavement to that gravel, and I can imagine that could be a little triggering yeah, as you move forward past that moment. So, um, but
Yeah.
maybe there's a little
You
bit
know,
of like when you come back though, maybe there's a little bit of redemption in hearing that sound as well. Like, oh, I'm back at Whetstone, instead of it being
you know,
re-traumatizing for you.
I think you're right, Axel, because when Joey and I came back just a few weeks ago for the last father-son weekend, even after he graduated, I was very upfront with him and I said, this is going to be hard for me because it brings up a lot of emotions. But it was so interesting as we drove away, we both had a whole different viewpoint and we were both open to saying, maybe we'll come back.
Hmm.
And that would have never been even a thought process 14, 16 months ago.
Yeah,
So it's nice to see that evolution over time.
right.
I'm curious, how did the conversations go back in the home with Joey as far as breaking the news or just saying, "Hey, we're looking at programs and here's what's happening. We feel like we need some help outside of what we can give, and here's what we're looking at." And how did he handle that? How did you guys navigate those conversations as parents and kind of that whole part of it?
Well, um, we did not tell him until 2 days. So he came on a Monday, and so we told him on a Saturday morning, the 2 days before. Part of that was because he was at a church camp with his brothers, and we definitely wanted him to be able to enjoy that. And same thing with his brothers. And also, we just didn't want him to have a long time to sit and think on it. So we asked our pastor to come, who had spent a lot of time with our son. And we had some really close friends who love Joey like a son to come because we knew that Joey would be very emotional and we didn't know how he would respond. And we knew he'd respond better if there were more people in the room. Um, so we had practiced what we were going to say. JD maybe can say more about that because he led the way. But
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Joey was very, very angry. And, but with our pastor and our other friends there, he just went like stone still, you know? So it was really hard. But I was so grateful my other friend was there because she just got on the floor next to him and just cried with him and said, "You know you need this. You know you need help in some ways that your family can't provide right now." And it just softened him having her there and he just kind of collapsed into her arms and cried and said, "Yeah, I need this." And that paved the way. Sorry, I'm trying not to cry, but that paved the way for the next 48 hours actually being a really um, kind of family centered time. And we had his grandparents over, we had some cousins over. He really wanted to say goodbye to people. He was not angry over those. He was really vulnerable, and I praise God for that because we did not know what those 48 hours were going to look like in our home. Um, so it could have been a lot different. So I was really glad that he was able to be at that point. JD, what do you think about that?
I, I definitely think having things planned out was very crucial. And even the words that we were communicating to him and the people that were there. And I know I'm not going to name anyone, but just hearing the stories from some of the other parents that have, from some of the other fathers that have experienced this, that's a really, really tough thing to do, to tell your son you're going to leave and go to Whetstone. And I'm, I don't know what everyone's situation is, but we left really early in the morning on Monday, and I, I remember telling Kelly, "Is he going to get in the car? Is he going to run away at a gas station, or is something else going to happen?" And while we were praying for that, not that those things happen, praying that he would be in the car. God provided a good friend interaction just literally at 5:30 in the morning on Monday that helped soften Joey again to get him into the car. And we didn't plan that. We couldn't have planned it. And we always look at that and say, that is just another item for us to say, God showing this is the path that I want you on. And
A friend showed up at
helping
the
you.
house at 5:30.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
They were actually staying in our we have a guest had a guest home, and they were staying there for the summer, and she didn't get to say goodnight or goodbye the night before. And so she said she just woke up. She didn't have an alarm set. She just woke up and thought, "Oh, I bet they're still home." And so she came over to see if we were home to say goodbye to Joey. And
Wow.
that was right about when Joey was starting to, like, well, you can't make me get in the car. You're starting to harden. And she just came over and hugged him and gave him a couple of like things for the car ride, and it was enough to soften him to get in the car. And
Right.
so it was really peace. It was less traumatic than I know it could have been, and what maybe other families have had to experience. I don't know, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's
Well,
why
if
I had asked, because I mean, it's all over the
yeah,
map, you can imagine. And, some parents with these types of programs, I mean, that's why they have the transport services,
yeah.
because it's just, for some parents, that's the only way. I mean, just whatever it takes to get your kid into a program to get the help you think they need, you're willing to do that. And that's such a hard part of the journey, along with many others. But so yeah, and that's just, I love hearing those stories, because it's a great reminder for me and for all of us, really, of just God's orchestration through everything from start to finish, really, through Whetstone, and just
Yeah.
how He's working in families and that whole journey. Because so much of that is just like, we know it's tough. We know uh, that it's just very emotionally ridden leading up to Whetstone, but just obviously with the day in, day out stuff here, we have so many things going on and keeping the program going, and working the program. But to just hear and just all the preliminary stuff before a family comes and steps foot on this campus, it's just a great reminder for us to know how God has orchestrated those things. And we believe that every kid that comes here is supposed to be here, but it's just a great reminder to hear just those little details of how God throws families their way of a relationship or situation to say, hey, this is right. This is what I have for you. It's not going to be easy, but
Internet dropped
this is it.
here. I'm not sure if you guys can see me or hear me. Oh, you guys are back.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you
Yeah,
guys hear
mine's
me?
kind of been going in and out. But, Yep.
I see you.
Are we all back now?
Um, and I don't know what next question. I think we're seeing
Reconnecting.
if Axel's reconnecting again, but um,
This actually leads into
Kelly
my
and
next
I
question. So if we
did
ever do get
something
reconnected, this will be
as soon as
a
Joey
nice
got
segue.
there, and I think hopefully long term it was really helpful. But we wrote a lot of letters and had family that wrote letters, friends that wrote letters, and he still has those in a big box out there.
I think that's a
Uh,
pretty big box.
Uh-oh. Refresh.
yeah.
I
It was,
remember the Joey Bus letters.
yeah, yeah.
Joey Bus, Joey Bus, Joey Bus, Joey Bus.
Well, it was pretty important to me that he
Yeah,
knew that he was not forgotten any day. So I mean, most of my letters were pretty short, but I
sure.
tried to mail him one almost every day, and I tried to encourage uh, other people to when they could. Like JD, I think wrote him most days too, and we mailed them separately because we wanted him to have just that extra piece that said, "This is what's happening. We're not forgetting you. Every moment that you are away from us, we are still thinking of you, and we're still praying for you. We know it's hard for you, but it's also hard for us too. And this is what's going on here."
Yeah.
And I think he said that was encouraging to him to get those, but it was, and they weren't long. Like I said, most of the time they were just like note cards or maybe just a paragraph or two.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were longer, but yeah.
No, I mean, all the kids, they love it when they get the mail, and some kids are jealous of the other boys because, maybe they're not getting as many pieces of
Yeah.
mail. But it brings up one of the next questions on 5 there that is can be discussed during the intensives, but just, that separation of a lot of, are you
Hey, I'm still here. I got disconnected. I'm going to try to see if it reconnects, but I don't want to have to restart the session. So
yeah.
let me ask a question, and then I'll let you talk. Were you in the middle of something?
I was in the middle of the intensive question, but
Oh, okay.
we
No,
can
I have a good
skip that.
question. You finish that,
Okay.
and then if I'm not able to get reconnected, I'll come back and ask it.
Yeah. So just, with the separation initially, I think we find that that's a good thing because, just you don't know what you got till it's gone cliche. Boys often realize like, okay, it just got real. Parents realize it just got real. It's more for the boys because they're like, they kept telling me this was going to happen, but I didn't believe them. But here I am, and then so it's just that communication back home with those letters is kind of the first part of that, like reconnection back home, and it's like that homesickness feel, which is a good feeling, or just a healthy feeling. But then as we get to, like, down the line, I guess getting to my question with a family intensive, really being able to help Joey see your perspective and help you guys see more of Joey's perspective. So maybe talk a little bit about that intensive and kind of maybe some things that were really eye-opening during that time, or just how that went, and maybe some revelations there, or just talk about what you learned during that intensive session.
I'll start this one because I remember, and I don't know if everyone knows this or not, but Katie Johnston is the therapist counselor, and we've enjoyed talking with her. And they have things set up to help with different forms of communication. And I still remember one game, and the light bulb finally went on for me that as I'm listening to Joey, and I'm thinking, well, why is he describing it that way? Or why is he saying it that way? That doesn't make any sense to me. But I started to realize, oh, that's how he's seeing it. That's how he's communicating it. And I'm not listening to how he's choosing his words, how he wants to describe it. And I need to be more open and accepting of how he wants to talk or how he sees things. And it was from a simple game, but that one game really opened me up to things that I had been failing on over several months.
Yeah,
Kelly?
I think it was more fun than I thought it was going to be. So
Yeah.
that's just good. I mean, it was more about communicating and working together and learning each other styles. And I think I thought it was going to be, and I know Katie, I think she says she does it differently on what different families need. So I don't know, but for maybe that's what we needed to learn to communicate way better. But it was, it was just good. And like Jada said, it was good to do those activities with him and to see the times that we could see, oh, that's how JD thinks, or that's how I think, or that's how neither one of us thinks, or neither one of us would respond that way. And to have that time, and then to have Katie's feedback sometimes, or her leading questions that kind of brought things, to the surface. It was really helpful, encouraging to me.
Yeah. I'll just throw one thing in there, and on the family intensive, and again, because I've just had an opportunity at different father-son weekends, every family does have something different. And just a recent conversation with another father revealed a totally different dynamic that they're going to face. And I started to realize that's the beauty of the family and intensive is you get that opportunity to bring up things that may have been sitting there for a year or more. And how do you address it? And I don't know, I'm really glad. And I'm with Kelly too. I was kind of dreading it partially, but it turned into a really profitable, just good time together.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for sharing that. Axel, you
You
have
guys see me now?
you can
Can you
have
hear
your
me?
burning question now.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you're
Oh
good.
yeah. Well, it's actually related to what you guys were talking about, the communication issue, which I thought was ironic since we're having such issues with this communication tool here. uh, one thing a lot of people talk about nationally in reference to the programs like Whetstone is students being, taken from their families and isolated and not having the opportunity to talk to them, and there are abuses that occur as a result of that lack of transparency and things like that. So we've done a lot to try to head that off and to prevent those kinds of abuses from happening here at Whetstone. But since we have you on the podcast and we can get your perspective on this and your testimony on it, instead of us just telling people that's the way it is, it's helpful to have actual parents who've been through the program verify that they were able to talk to their son, and the frequency. We've already mentioned the father-son weekend and the family intensives, but on a regular basis, how often were you able to talk to Joey, and how helpful were those conversations in preparing the way for him to come home and helping you to identify the issues that you needed to deal with as a family?
Um, well, I think at the very beginning, what is it, 2 weeks that you have
Mm-hmm.
just phone or just emails, not emails,
Yeah,
just mail back and forth.
right.
So that's the hardest part, obviously, is letting them adjust and knowing we knew that was coming. And then you start having the phone calls that are once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different levels, as you guys know, of time that Joey has to talk with us, which I thought were good because, most kids nowadays don't talk on the phone. So there was a lot of awkward silence sometimes. They're like,
Yeah.
this is the one time we get to talk to you. Tell us what's
Uh-huh.
going on. Um, but what I also did want to mention was, as we got to know the staff, was really encouraging me that certain staff would sometimes text us and say, like, hey, this is what happened with Joey today. We're just, reaching out. Or
Yeah.
Joey's, a little homesick today, so I told him I'd text you and just tell you guys that he loves you, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just encouraging to me to have that little feedback every once in a while. I never tried to text them back or things. I knew they were doing their jobs, and so I wanted to trust them. But it was really
Yeah.
encouraging to me that it built trust, because I felt like if Joey's really struggling, they're going to reach out to me and let us know that was going on. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I think on that side too, on the communication, one thing you touched on, Axel, was how did it prepare us for him leaving Whetstone? There was, I think it was probably in the last couple months or last 3 months, we started to have conversations, and Kelly and we got off the phone and we just looked at each other and we said, he was asking us more questions. He was starting to not have it be about himself, but to ask us, how's this going? How's this person doing? And that was a moment we just realized, hey, there's some maturing that's been taking place out there.
Yeah.
yeah. And
That's
there's
good.
what is it, once a month, I think you have the video call. So that
Yes.
was always
Yeah.
encouraging to get, to see his face. And I know everybody feels different about social media. And originally, we weren't going to allow you to put his face on social media.
Uh-huh.
And then I decided I wanted to see it. So I was like,
Yeah.
I'd rather find his face. You guys were on a field trip or working or something.
Right.
And
Right.
just, eyes on him. I could see his face and see, what's going on. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's good to hear, because I do a lot of those Facebook posts, and so it's good to hear that they're encouraging
Yeah.
people and making them feel good about where the son's
Yeah.
at. So
Yeah.
cool. So you guys talked about
Um,
father son while I was
I
gone. You talked about Sorry.
There's a delay.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead,
All right.
Axel.
Oh, uh, I caught on that you talked about father son while I was gone, and I just
It
wanted
was
to
a little
mention
more
that.
about the intensives, but
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention. I'm not sure people listening picked up on the fact that JD and Joey were a part of the father son weekend while they were here, and then they came back to the one that we just had a couple weeks ago, which is super cool. It's very encouraging to us. But that was another question I have, and you're in the middle of it, so you can, I think, really speak to it. Is the aftercare aspect of the program? We had a podcast that we talked about it, and it's still an aspect of the program that we're wanting to grow, and things of that nature. But just from your experience, I just wanted to get some perspective on what that's like when he comes home, the transition, the availability of Whetstone when he leaves, in terms of answering questions that you have or helping with transfer of credits to schools, things like that. You could comment on that part of the program.
I'm going to jump in at the very beginning of, well, I say beginning, but it's if you're in our case, Joey graduated. I know it's a different situation for every child, but
Mm-hmm.
at that point that Joey graduated, the one thing that I thought helped set the stage was we had our immediate family in with Katie, and we had, I don't know, a 45-minute session of discussing things before we all got in the car and left. And
Mm-hmm.
that was, I thought that was a good starting point, kind of setting the stage for how the relationships could possibly change as we go home and enter the next phase of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've got some other thoughts on there, but Kelly, jump on in.
Um, yeah, that was really helpful. And we came home with the behavior contract, which, no contract is perfect. So us trying to figure out how to make sure we try to uphold our end of the contract. Our son did a pretty good job of holding up his end of the contract. Been pretty, he's been really different. So that has been really, really encouraging to us. And then
Mm-hmm.
I think JD and I, as we talked about with the family intensive, learned some different skills to communicate better with him and to help him um, de-escalate the situation if there was a tense situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, praise God, we haven't had any major incidents. There's been a few tense moments, but we've used the skills and we've seen him use the skills.
Right.
And I think for him, a big thing is he has learned to communicate so much better that, like, Katie told us, well, you can email me, you can call me, we can do a follow up video counseling with him. She had all the stuff ready. You know,
Yeah.
we yet didn't need it. So I just am very grateful that Joey has been able to apply a lot of the skills that he's learned, and that JD and I have been able to, at this point, give him the space needed a couple times where before maybe I would have not, as you would say, dropped the rope yet. I would have been kind of trying to stay in the situation longer. So
Yeah.
I've seen that. And then because the other question you asked about school, we homeschool in the past and we are homeschooling Joey again this year. So we can't really answer that question. Um, yeah, Katie.
I think two things I would throw out there is one is you had brought up that we attended the father son, and that was actually it was encouraging for me, but I think it was actually encouraging for Joey as well because there are some relationships with staff that he continues to keep in touch with and that have had an impact on his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm incredibly grateful for that. And that's one of the reasons that I'm up to 60% of the father son weekends. I can see how many more we can get to, but
nice.
helping and not wanting that relationship from the past to dwindle or wanting that to continue to grow is one reason to keep going back and just having him be involved. and it's so helpful for me as well. Um, and so that's one thing I would just encourage everyone out there, not to go just to go, but the people that are serving at Whetstone, they've have relationships with those boys, and you don't know what that impact's going to be. Maybe you find out right now, maybe you won't find out for years to come, and that's something that is invaluable out there.
Yeah.
And when we first told Joey, JD and I decided that it would be good for them to go back to the father son before we told Joey. We didn't ask him. We just kind of told him he was going. And at first, I think he'd only been home maybe 3 or 4 weeks when we told him that. So at first he was a little like, no, really? Do I ask him that? I don't want to. But then as the time passed, he was actually getting excited.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I do want to see, Mr. Brown. I want to see, different names and things. And so that was encouraging to me, because I thought it would take a longer time for him to start to look back at some of the growth from Whetstone. But I think
Mm-hmm.
uh, he's already seen some of that and fruit in his life. And that's been encouraging to me. I mean, I know he'll see it a lot differently even at 16, 17, 18.
Right.
But he's already seen some of that impact now.
Yeah. Well,
Cool.
we've had we've had boys who've gone through the program twice, so he may have and we talk about that sometimes with them. So he may have thought that was a way of you getting him back here to leave to leave him again.
No.
I'm
getting
curious.
close to
I don't
our-
want to.
Yeah, go ahead, Brandon.
I don't want to keep going back to like prior and some of the negative stuff going on in the home, but I think it's helpful, and I am curious, just because I have a big family and my youngest is a son, and just how did I guess it's a two-part question. When Joey was gone, how did that affect your marriage, and then maybe the other family members, and how did they handle that, and how did the conversations go with the other kids? And so just feel free to share what you're comfortable sharing there, but I think that um, would be helpful too for some potential parents looking at Whetstone.
Well, one one thing that we talked about as a couple and as a family during that first few months and even first year is there was, it sounds bad to say it, but there was a certain relief that we experienced from not having some of the emotional conflicts, some of the verbal conflicts, and some of the other items that were taking place. Um, and we also, I think collectively, we needed the time to heal ourselves and for our sons to have some healing and to deal with some of the frustrations or just challenges they had with their brother. And that's uh, that was, I think, the biggest thing that came up to me is just the fact that we walked away thinking, oh, this is really hard. Our son's away and it's sad, but then the same moment you have in your heart a sense of relief that a tension is not currently present with you.
Mhm.
So Kelly, throw some color or something in there.
Yeah. Well, like I said, he is our youngest son that went to Whetstone, and so he has four older brothers, and they were, I mean, they would all say this, they were pretty much done with him. They were just really frustrated with what with all the time it took of JD and I to try to help and manage and guide and discipline all the things, and they were also frustrated for all the things that had changed, or I mean, so they were not sad. They were not sad. But what was exciting to me was as each time he would come home, or they would hear us have conversations with him on the phone, that they were all softening towards him. So they were all excited for him to come back home, and they were excited to develop relationships with him again. and to give him a chance to be a new kid at home again. And that was really encouraging to me. And then, like JD said, it was the first month, I think I walked around just feeling like this huge weight was lifted off of me in our home, of just always wondering what he was doing, where he was at. Was he doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing? If I go get on to him, is it going to turn into World War III? You know, all of the different scenarios. And so having that gone just allowed me to focus on relationships with my other boys that I had been neglecting, because the squeakiest wheel gets all the attention. And
Good
so
point.
it was a good year in that way to be able to spend time with them. And then for JD and I think while Joby was gone, it gave us a chance to be able to, again, the tension was gone. Because I'm sure most parents can imagine in a situation like that, there were times that we just didn't agree on how to handle the conflict that was happening. And so that put stress on us while I would try to either de-escalate in a way that he wasn't escalating, or I don't know, all those kind of details. But so for us to have a year where we could be in agreement that Joey at Whetstone was the best option and the best choice for our family was really relieving, and gave us a chance to work together, you know, towards having him coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of just bitterness when, like you said, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and all that attention goes to one, and you still got four other kids in the home. Or I mean, I deal with that just in my home as well, of just with just trying to get to everybody equal amount of times. If somebody's really struggling through a season, you can see it in the other kids, and it's just like, hey, I'm over here, I need help too. And it's just like sometimes they just that bitterness can get rooted in the other kids that way. And so there's just so much throughout the journey of that we have to navigate as parents, that is even accentuated if you have to need some extra help at a place like Whetstone. So, well, thanks
Hey,
for sharing.
Brandon,
Yes, sir.
you just on that point you were just bringing up, one really brief story is when we had our family session with Katie after graduation. Every son was there except for our oldest, but they all had opportunities to share, and there was a very frank and direct conversation from one of our sons to Joey, and it was very emotional, a lot of hurt, a lot of frustration. But what I took away from that is I was watching Joey, and he didn't fight, he didn't get upset. He took it, and that relationship has started to grow dramatically while he's been back. And I can tell you right now, a year ago or more would have never thought that possibility.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Hard things are good. Good things are hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Praise the Lord. Well, Brandon, that was going to be my last question. So, you got to be kidding me. All of the questions you like to ask, I like to ask too.
That's two.
Yeah.
Nacho.
Getting a little nacho reference there. Yeah. It's important. All right. Well, this has been great. Thank you, Kelly and JD, for joining us and making the time to do this. I think this is going to be very encouraging to a lot of people. So we love you, and we miss seeing Joey, but we're not sad that he's back where he needs to be. So it's like a bittersweet kind of thing. So, and if you're going to make a habit of coming to these father-son things, then keep that percentage moving up. Get it from 60 to 75 next time.
Woo! Yay!
And Kelly, we'd love to see you too. We don't have a mother-son retreat yet, but maybe someday.
Someday.
Yeah.
Well, hey, if there's just one thing I could end with, Axel, I've told I've told a few people, I said, this is never what we intended, never what
Hmm.
we had planned,
Yeah.
but God has used it in a mighty way, and we've appreciated the heart and the people at Whetstone and what they have done. And so, thank you. Nobody's perfect, but we appreciate the work that's been done and how that's impacted us.
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, it was our pleasure.
Awesome. Feelings mutual on our end. We're always just thankful that parents entrust us with their greatest asset. So it means a lot to us as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah. All right, we'll keep
Thank
our
you.
fingers crossed and make sure all this recorded properly. So we'll.
Woohoo!
All
All
right.
right.
Well, it was great talking to you. We'll see you,
Bye.
and we'll catch
Yeah.
everyone else
See
next
you
time
All
on
right.
the Time to Sharpen. All right. Bye bye.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye bye.